So we start with the price. This month's median sales price for Metro Atlanta is $430,000. So that's up 7.1% from last year, last April, and it's also up from last month. March was $425,000. So that's about just a little bit over, right at 1%, a little over 1% for month over month, and that's up from February. It was 415. So going back to the bottom, 400 at the bottom. We bottomed out in the median sales price in December. It stayed the same in January. Then we had a pretty good jump from 400 to 415. That's almost a 4% jump from January to February. Then we had another jump from February to March, about $10,000, which was about 2%, a little over, about almost 2.5% from February to March, and then March to April again, right at about 1%, a little over 1% increase for month over month from March to April of this year. So last month I told you I expected the trend to continue. This regular spring trend is for prices to go up. We see prices dip and bottom out in the fall and winter, and then we start to go back up in the spring and through the summer. We usually peak in the summer month around May or June, sometimes July, but usually by July it kind of levels off and starts to go back down. But we'll see if we continue the month's trend, the usual spring trend. All right, let's look at some other numbers. Homes for sale, we had a pretty steep, well, not super steep, about a 1,200 increase. We went from 11,522 homes for sale in March up to 12,799. And the number, the real kicker here, you can see, is that's 39.4% more than we had this time last year. So April of 2023, we only had how many homes for sale on the market? 9,182. So we're up to 12,799. So about 3,600 more this year than we had last year. We're still way below. We're still pretty well below pre-pandemic numbers. Got to open the chart up for you to see that. But these are the kind of numbers that you hear from some shock jocks, crash bros, real estate crash bros, doom and gloomers. You see numbers like this when you see the inventory rise by 39%, almost 40% from last year. And that people will say, oh, wow, my goodness, this number has exploded. Atlanta real estate inventory is going through the roof. We are about to see a crash. And this is the kind of stuff they use to convince you that we are about to see a crash. But if we just go back to 2022, the peak number in 2022 for homes listed was 13,464. We're not even back to that yet. And this is when the interest rate started to go up. So we saw the number of homes for sale decrease when the interest rate started to go up, because people don't want to move from a mortgage or house where they have a 3% or 4%, 3.5% mortgage on it, to then paying 6 or 7 or 8%, which is what we got up to almost. Well, we did get up to 8%. So those sellers just decided to either take the houses off the market or just not even put them on the market in the first place. And that's what we've been. We see it bottomed out in April of 2023, usually when the number of listings start going back up. This is the spring. They did eventually start going back up. May, June, went up a little bit, July, and we peaked in October of 2023. Then the inventory started to go back down again. All right, so most of this is something that the interest rates, mortgage interest rates are affecting. So now we started seeing inventory go back up, right? Because interest rates dipped in this time here, December, January, February. We've been kind of bouncing around, but we did see a pretty good dip back in February, March, and now we've gone back up a little bit, not super high, but we're above 7% again, when we had been down to about 6.5%, which was back in this time frame here. So when the interest rates were down, we saw more people putting their house on the market and getting in the market to buy a new house, because they didn't think it was too bad for them to get out of that 3 or 4% rate to go into a 6 or a 6.5% rate. But now with the rate back up to 7%, we see, inventory increasing because people put their houses on the market. The interest rates went up. Knocked some of the buyers out of the market because the interest rate increased. Now we are seeing the inventory climb. Well, my opinion on where this is going is, if we continue to see the interest rates stay above 7, and if they go any higher, definitely we'll start to see what we saw over here. We'll see inventory slide again, because it takes a few months for sellers to realize, hey, interest rates are up. Now there are fewer buyers in the market. Either we're going to have to reduce our prices, or give incentives or give concessions to buyers. So we don't want to do that. And plus, we don't want to go and pay now 7.5% on our new house. So we're just going to sit tight. So I predict that this will start, this inventory. I mean, we typically see inventory rise in the spring and summer because that's when most of the buyers come out. But now we're talking about interest rates. So interest rates, the higher interest rates go, the fewer buyers that are going to be in the market because they just can't get approved for the same amount they would get approved for at a lower rate. And also, like I said, those home sellers who would also be buyers, because once you sell one house, you got to buy another one. Typically, they're not going to be making a move because they don't want to leave a 3 or 4 or 5% rate to go to a 7.5% rate. So my opinion is that we'll start seeing the inventory, if the interest rate stays where it's at or increases, we'll see inventory dip again. If we see the interest rates come down some, if we get down below 7%, I think we may still see inventory decrease. We may see it just kind of level off, because what's going to happen when the interest rate does decrease, that's going to bring more buyers back into the market, including those buyers who are also sellers. So those sellers are going to be putting their houses on the market and also buying, right? So they're going to put one on and take one off. So that's kind of going to cancel out. But there will be more buyers that don't own a home right now that also come back into the market, because now they can get approved for a little bit more with a lower rate, and they're going to be able to come in and buy some of these homes up. So we're either going to see it level off or take a dip over the next 2 to 3 months. In my opinion, I don't think we'll see it continue to elevate, just because one or two things is going to happen. It takes the market usually a couple of months to kind of adjust to what's going on, and these interest rates are changing every single day. So that's it's one of those things we got to kind of wait and see. Just give you my opinion on that though. So if you're looking to sell right now, this is something you got to consider. You have more competition, and all real estate is hyper local. So when I say you got more competition, it's relative, right? We got roughly 13 houses on the market in Atlanta right now. If we go back, let me open this chart up to the 5-year view. If we go back to pre-pandemic 2019, we had almost 20,000 houses on the market. We're nowhere close to that. We're 7,000. We got 7,000 to go to get back to pre-pandemic level, right? So we don't have the inventory that's going to drive prices down significantly, but we do have the interest rates that are keeping a lot of the buyers on the sidelines. So what this does, it's just another one of these pieces of the puzzle, one of the parts of the equation that is the housing market. And you can see from this that it's just not a simple thing of, if this happens, this happens, this. So it's a whole bunch of factors that you have to consider when you're thinking about buying or selling. So selling, if you're thinking about selling, you got to know, okay, really you have to look at your area. Like I said, real estate is super hyper local. You got to look at your neighborhood, your zip code, your school district, and see what's going on in your specific area. So like I said, we're 7,000 houses short of the pre-pandemic level that we were at in 2019. So we still need more houses on the market. I mean, it's not like we switched to a buyer's market. It's still a seller's market. But you have to be aware of what's going on, like how many houses are in your neighborhood that's on the market, how many have sold in the last 3 months, that type of stuff, to try to figure out how do we position your home to sell for the most money in the least amount of time. You're going to have if the interest rate is up, you're going to have a smaller pool of buyers. The higher your price point, the smaller your buyer pool is as well. So all these things you have to take into consideration when you're thinking about putting your home on the market, when you're pricing it, when you're staging it, when you're doing all of these things, if you really want to get your home sold. All right. If you're a buyer, again, the interest rates are a big determining factor as to how much you can buy, how much you're going to be approved for. Generally speaking, I would say if you're in a situation where you need to buy and you can afford to buy, meaning you have the stable, steady income, you have a stable employment situation, you have money saved up for your down payment, you have money, you have to consider money that you have to save up and put out for your closing costs. All these things you need to consider. But if you're in a position to buy, and you can, then most cases I'll say it makes sense to go ahead and buy, because with rent, you're at the mercy of your landlord. They're going to raise that rent. Typically, every year or every couple of years, that rent's going to be going up. Whereas your mortgage payment, at least your principal and interest portion, is going to stay consistent. If you get a fixed rate mortgage for either 15, 20, or 30 years, that mortgage payment is never going to change. Now, what can change is your property taxes and your insurance. Property taxes can go up or down. Typically, they don't go down, but sometimes they do. Insurance is going to go up, but these things don't change drastically. So you're not going to go, for example, from a $1,500 a month payment to a $2,000 a month payment from one year to the next. You typically, if your insurance goes up or your property taxes go up, it's an incremental change. So you may see a $30 or $40 difference, a higher payment in your mortgage payment, including the property taxes and insurance. Okay. So these are some other things you got to consider when you're thinking about buying.